My ex-wife came crawling back after I inherited my dad's fortune. But I moved on. I'm 36, recently divorced, and somehow managing to juggle raising two kids while running a business I never wanted. Life has a funny way of coming full circle, but let me start from the beginning because there's quite a story to tell. My father built his merchandising business from nothing but grit and determination. He wasn't just successful, he was the kind of successful that turns heads at charity galas. The kind of success that men our family name open doors throughout the city. The kind that lets you send your kid to any college they want, drive luxury cars, and still have enough left over to donate buildings to the local hospital. But like many self-made men, he had dreams of passing his legacy onto his only son. That's me. The thing is, I had different plans. While he saw suits, board meetings, and quarterly reports in my future, I saw lines of code and the endless possibilities of technology. I was the kid who took apart computers just to see how they worked, who stayed up late teaching myself programming languages while my friends were out partying. My room looked like a Radio Shack had exploded, with circuit boards and cables everywhere. Mom used to joke that she needed a map just to vacuum in there. When college application time came around, I chose a computer science degree instead of business school. The fight that followed was epic. Dad couldn't understand why I'd want to waste my potential playing with computers when I could be learning to run a real business. Mom played peacekeeper, as usual, convincing him to at least let me try my way. Dad was disappointed, sure, but he held out hope that I'd come to my senses after graduation. He figured once I saw what the corporate world was really like, I'd come running back to take over the family business. But that's not what happened. Instead, I landed a job at a major tech company and thrived. By 29, I had my own house in a nice neighborhood, a new car in the driveway, and a career that made me excited to get up every morning. I didn't need his money. I was building my own life, my own way. That's when things really went south. Dad gave me one final ultimatum: join the business or be cut out of the will entirely. The argument that followed shook the house. I told him I didn't need his money, that I was doing fine on my own. He called me ungrateful, said I was spitting on everything he'd built. I chose my passion, and he chose to give everything to charity. Our relationship hit rock bottom. Then Mom died. It wasn't gradual. There was no time to prepare. One minute she was planning Sunday dinner. The next she was gone. Massive heart attack while gardening. It's funny how death has a way of putting things in perspective. Dad had always been larger than life. The successful businessman, the community leader, the man who always knew what to do. But after Mom's heart attack, I saw him for what he really was: a lonely old man who just lost his best friend. The big house he'd been so proud of suddenly seemed to swallow him whole. That's when things started to change between us. I began visiting more often, bringing my kids to see their grandfather. My daughter, Sarah, has his eyes, that same mischievous twinkle when she's up to something. And my son, James, inherited his stubborn chin and unwavering determination. Watching them together, it was like seeing pieces of Mom and Dad come back to life. Dad stepped back from the business, letting a trust handle operations while he focused on being a grandpa. He taught the kids card tricks, told them stories about the old days, and spoiled them rotten with ice cream before dinner. All the things Mom would have scolded him for. But life has a way of throwing curveballs, and Dad's health started failing. His kidneys were giving out, and he needed dialysis twice a week. I stepped up without hesitation, arranging my work schedule to take him every Wednesday and Saturday. My boss was understanding. 10 years of loyalty earns you some flexibility. I'd leave early on Wednesdays, make up the work at night, and use my Saturdays to help Dad through his treatments. That's when my wife, Emma, showed her true colors. She'd never been Dad's biggest fan, especially after he cut me out of the will. But when I started taking him to dialysis regularly, she completely lost it. Every Wednesday and Saturday became a battleground. She deliberately planned events I couldn't miss, leave me alone with the kids when I had work to finish, or pick fights that would last into the early hours of the morning. "Why are you wasting time on him?" she'd demand, hands on her hips. that familiar look of contempt crossing her face. He cut you off. He doesn't care about you. He's just manipulating you again. But that's not how family works. You don't abandon your father just because he's not leaving you any money. You don't walk away when someone needs you just because there's nothing in it for you. I yelled back. Those twice-weekly drives to dialysis became precious time together. We talked about everything and nothing. His childhood, my work, mom's terrible cooking that we both pretended to love. Sometimes we just sat in comfortable silence, two stubborn men finally learning to understand each other. I tried explaining this to Emma, but she couldn't or wouldn't understand. Her own family treated relationships like business transactions, always keeping score of who owed what to whom. Maybe that's why she couldn't comprehend doing something simply because it was right. The final straw came when Dad's condition worsened. He could barely walk anymore, needing support just to get from his bed to the car. I started taking more time with him, making sure he was comfortable, driving slower to avoid jarring his fragile body. This meant I was getting home later, and Emma's patience ran out. "Choose," she said one night, standing in our bedroom doorway with her arms crossed. "Him or me?" My response was immediate. Him. The look of shock on her face would have been comical if it wasn't so sad. She honestly thought I'd choose her manipulative behavior over my dying father. She packed her bags that night, slamming drawers and muttering under her breath about how I'd regret this. A few days later, divorce papers arrived. To my surprise and relief, she didn't want custody of the kids. Her mother later told me Emma was too young to be tied down with children. Some mother, right? The woman who'd cried through both pregnancies about how blessed she was to have children was now abandoning them without a second thought. That's when I made the best decision of my life. I moved the kids and myself into Dad's house. He had a full-time caregiver who was happy to help with the children and watching him play with his grandkids. I hadn't seen him that happy since before Mom died. It was like everything had fallen into place. The kids thrived in the big old house. Sarah claimed Mom's old sewing room as her art studio, covering the walls with drawings of our family, always including Dad in his favorite armchair. James took over the garden, determined to finish planting those roses that Mom never got to. My dad supervised from his wheelchair, offering advice and stories about Mom's green thumb. Then, last week, Dad passed away in his sleep. The doctor said he went peacefully, content after spending the evening playing cards with his grandchildren. It hurt, God, but knowing his final months were filled with joy made it easier to bear. That's when the real bombshell dropped. The lawyer called me in to read the will, and I almost didn't go. What was the point? Dad had given everything to charity, right? Wrong. It turns out I had been his heir all along. He never changed the will, never cut me off. It had all been a bluff, his last attempt to get me to join the family business. The lawyer told me Dad was actually proud of me for sticking to my guns, for choosing passion over money. He respected that I built my own success instead of riding his coattails. Your father told me it was the moment he knew you'd be all right, the lawyer said. That you had the strength to stand up for what you believed in, even against him. Now I own it all. The business, the house, everything. And guess who showed up at my door as soon as the news got out? Emma. She came crying about how much she missed the kids, how we should reconcile for their sake. When I refused, the tears dried up pretty quick. Now she's threatening to sue for half of everything, claiming she deserves a share of Dad's wealth. But her chances were slim. We divorced before the inheritance, and she gave up custody of the kids. The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman who criticized my father's manipulation was now trying to manipulate her way into his fortune. But I learned from the best about standing my ground and fighting for what matters. Dad taught me that even when I thought he was pushing me away. After that, I ran Dad's company. Turns out business isn't so bad when you can bring a tech perspective to it. Raised two amazing kids and honored the legacy of a man who taught me more than I ever realized. The house was full of memories. My childhood, Mom's cooking, Dad teaching the kids card tricks from his hospital bed. We stayed here, in the heart of everything he built. I took the kids to the Bahamas last month, our first real vacation in years. Sitting on that beach, watching them play in the waves, I couldn't help but think about Dad. He would have loved this, would have been right there building sandcastles with them. James collected seashells, insisting we bring some back to put on Grandpa's grave. Sarah wrote, "We love you, Grandpa," in the sand, and made me take a picture before the tide came in. Sometimes the biggest inheritances aren't measured in dollars and cents. Sometimes they're measured in the lessons we learn, the strength we find, and the love that survives even when everything else falls apart. Dad taught me that success isn't about the money you make or the things you own. It's about the legacy you leave behind. That's my father's real legacy. Not the business or the house or the money in the bank. It's the love he showed us, the values he instilled, and the family he brought together, even after he was gone. And no amount of legal threats or manipulative tears can take that away. As for Emma, let her try to get what she wants. I've got something worth far more than money, a family that stands together, memories that can't be bought, and the knowledge that sometimes the hardest paths lead to the best destinations. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them, so please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one.